Good afternoon, this is Terry from the Frugal Connection. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making dinner and I want to invite you along with me while I make a favorite dish of mine, which is shakshuka. Shakshuka is a North African or Middle Eastern dish where you poach eggs in a tomato and vegetable mixture on top of the stove. However, because I eat plant-based whole food, I'm not going to use eggs, and instead today we're going to make a vegan chickpea shakshuka. I'm going to get the camera turned around and I'm going to show you the ingredients that we're going to use for this. Let me show you what we're working with here. I have 1 onion that's diced. I have 3 cloves of garlic that I minced. I have a half of a bell pepper, red bell pepper, that I also diced. I also had part of a zucchini in the refrigerator, so I decided to go ahead and add that. So I chopped that up. Here I have portobello mushrooms, baby bellas that I diced. And on this plate we have 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of coriander, a half a teaspoon of black pepper. Then here I have a little less than 2 cups of chickpeas. You can use 1 15-ounce can of chickpeas that I drained. And I also had some tomato paste. This recipe calls for about 2 to 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. And I also have in here, I just pulled it from my freezer. It's homemade marinara sauce, or basically just like a tomato sauce. And I'm going to thaw that out while we cook it and use that. But you can also use a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes or tomato sauce, whatever you can find. Any sort of tomato base works well. All right, we're going to turn the camera around and show you how to put this recipe together. Okay, traditional shakshuka is this Middle Eastern or North African dish. It just takes on different variations depending where you are. Traditionally, it does not have mushrooms in it, nor does it have zucchini, but because I had these and those pair well with tomatoes, I decided to go ahead and make it with those, and that will also pack on some extra nutrition with the vegetables. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to the stove and we're going to get started on this. It comes together super easy. It's delicious. You can have it for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. Traditionally, you have it with crusty bread. I made a loaf of Italian bread for my family yesterday. And that's what made me think of this. I thought, you know what, I'm going to use that up. I'll give them the bread. And I'll probably serve it over rice for them. And I'm going to use riced cauliflower as the base for mine. So let's go over to the stove and get started on the recipe. Traditional shakshuka has eggs that are poached in the tomato sauce, but because I eat plant-based, I don't want to use eggs, obviously. I also do not use oil in my cooking as much as possible, so I am going to start by sauteing the onions and the peppers, starting in a dry saute pan. I just have a pan right here. I wanted one with some depth to it for the tomato sauce. And if I need to add a little water while I'm cooking, I will do that so that it doesn't stick to the pan. But I'm going to show you how that works as we get going. All right, friends, I'm going to start this on a medium heat and just get this warming up here. And let me grab my vegetables. All right, so what I'm going to start off with is just putting my onions and my peppers into the pan. You know what? It's easier to just use my hands. Now, if you notice when I was putting the seasoning, when I showed you the seasoning that we're going to use in this dish on the plate, I did not have salt on it. I try to use very little salt in my cooking, but because I'm sauteing vegetables, I want to just use a little bit in this, so I'm not adding any extra into my sauce. So we're going to get these started. I'm just going to add a couple turns on my sea salt grater here to get it started. and I'll come back when these get going. Friends, I want to come back on here. As you can see, it's starting to saute. I don't know if you can hear the sizzling. And I can see moisture starting to come out of this, but like I said, if it starts to stick, what I'm going to do is just add a tiny little bit of water, and that will unstick it. So this just shows you do not need oil while you're cooking. I mean, if you're adding oil into your pan, it's 120 tablespoons for oil, regardless of what kind you use. But it has no nutritional value, and it's just empty calories that are adding calories to your meal. So it's possible to cook without it, and you still get all the flavor of the vegetables in your dish, but without all those extra calories. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of water. I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. I had it on a medium just to get it started, but now I want to turn it down to low and let it just take its time and saute. Once these get really soft and translucent, then I will add in the garlic. All right, friends, you can see my tomatoes, my peppers and my onions are getting soft. They're translucent, the onions are, and now what I'm going to add into this is my garlic. And I'm just going to cook this for another, probably saute it for another minute before I add in the other vegetables. It smells so good. I love that blend of peppers and onions and garlic. Now the garlic you do need to watch, because the garlic sticks very easily compared to the other vegetables. So if that happens, I kind of try to keep them on top of the onions and the peppers, but if that happens, again, I just use the water to release it from the pan. But you do need to keep an eye on the garlic, because it goes very quickly from being done to burnt. And there's nothing worse than burnt garlic, which will ruin the taste of the entire dish. All right, so now what I'm also going to add in here is my zucchini and my mushrooms. I'm going to give another crank or two of the sea salt. I'm just using sea salt I purchased at Aldi. I like using the grinder because then I can control better the amount of salt going in, and I don't have the tendency to over salt it. If you don't want salt, if you're not eating salt, just leave it out. It's not necessary. All right, I'm going to give this a good 2 to 3 minutes to let those vegetables soften up, and then I'm going to add in the tomatoes. All right, friends, you can see my tomatoes, my peppers and my onions are getting soft. They're translucent, the onions are, and now what I'm going to add into this is my garlic. And I'm just going to cook this for another, probably saute it for another minute before I add in the other vegetables. All right, so now what I'm also going to add in here is my zucchini and my mushrooms. I'm going to give another crank or two of the sea salt. I'm just using sea salt I purchased at Aldi. I like using the grinder because then I can control better the amount of salt going in, and I don't have the tendency to over salt it. If you don't want salt, if you're not eating salt, just leave it out. It's not necessary. All right, I'm going to give this a good 2 to 3 minutes to let those vegetables soften up, and then I'm going to add in the tomatoes. All right, friends, this has been going for a while. As you can see, the vegetables are getting nice and soft. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, I transferred my tomato sauce, or I'm sorry, my tomato sauce into this Pyrex measuring cup just so that I could defrost it. And I'm going to pour it in there. It's still a little frozen in the middle, which is okay because it's going to cook while it goes. Let me get all this out of here. And now I think I'm going to let this go for a few minutes just so that the rest of the sauce will defrost in the middle before I add in my other ingredients. If you're just taking it straight from a can, you obviously don't have to do this step. All right, friends, there's still got a lump in the middle here that's frozen, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work around that for the moment, and I am going to put all my spices in there because I want them to have time to kind of simmer and incorporate into this dish, and I will just keep stirring it until that is all mixed in well. And to this also, I'm going to add in about 2 tablespoons of, that might be a little more than 2, but 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. You can use 2 to 3, just get it to the thickness you want. And again, I'm going to let this continue to simmer. I'm going to let that chunk of frozen sauce in the middle melt. And once that's all done, then I'm going to just add my chickpeas. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in my chickpeas. And give that a good mix. Now this is getting bubbly, and I'm going to turn the heat down so I can let it simmer. And I'm going to let it simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. You just want it to have time to really come together, all those spices to get in there, get their aroma released and their taste released throughout the sauce. Like I said, traditionally this would be bubbly, and then they would add a cracked egg on the top, like a few eggs, and let those eggs poach right in the sauce. But we're not doing that since this is plant-based. Okay, so I will meet you back here for a taste test as soon as this is done. So it's going to be about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. I'll see you shortly. I'm gonna give this a test. I have my riced cauliflower. It smells amazing. It looks delicious. Let's see how it tastes. Wow. That was really good. I can taste the cumin, the coriander, gives it that really warm Middle Eastern flavor. The riced cauliflower is going to make it guilt-free as far as adding extra calories in, but I could certainly have it over brown rice or something like that. Definitely give this a try. I will post the link to the recipe down below in the description box. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. This is quick, easy, delicious, and very nutritious. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.